Hey, it's Keisha. So welcome and welcome back. Um, Today's video is inspired by the fact that I'm cute. 1 week into my program and it's working. And I was telling my friend that I was too cute and I needed to be seen today. And I was like, maybe I should do a video, but I didn't have a topic. So we were talking and she said, well, what about how to make decisions? How not to be, how to not second guess yourself. And I'm like, that's a good one. In fact, obviously, the first thing that came to my mind was a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways, right? That's James chapter 1, verse 8. And so I was thinking about the verse, and I thought, well, if it's verse 8, let me read the preceding 7 verses. And actually, those 7 verses, or 6 of them at least, had a lot to do with what I was already thinking about I would talk to you today, or tell you today. So let's just read that and then come back into the discussion. James, a servant of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ, to the 12 tribes which are scattered abroad, greeting. My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into diverse temptations, knowing this, that the trying of your faith worketh patience. But let patience have her perfect work, that ye may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing. If any of you lack wisdom, let him ask of God, that giveth to all men liberally and upbraideth not, and it shall be given to him. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering. For he that wavereth is like the wave on the sea, driven by the wind and tossed. For let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. So temptations, the diverse temptations, those are our trials and tribulations, the things that we go through that cause us to have to make decisions, and then we begin to second guess them. Those trials and tribulations, or trials or temptations, or anything that would take you off your path. The interesting thing is you already know what your path is. It's just a matter of getting silent enough inside and having a direct connection with your source that you can hear that and trust in that wisdom. But we'll come to more on that later. So I love that he says, rejoice when you have trials, because that means that you're learning lessons that are part of your purpose for being. We can't learn our lessons in isolation. They have to come through experience. Right? So James tells us that he tells us straight up, if we lack wisdom, ask of God. That's why you need to meditate and have a strong, regular connection with your Creator. And then he goes on to say, let him ask in faith, not wavering. So you need to ask a definite question, and also ask trusting that you're going to get a solid answer, right? Not being afraid of what the answer will be or questioning even that. And, all systems of divination have been around, since we started asking questions and then wanting validation. If we've made the right decision, or we want to kind of know what's going to happen if we make certain decisions. And we want to try to confirm if we've made the right one. And so all systems of divination require that you ask a direct, precise question if you want to receive direct, precise answers. So for instance, like in the I Ching, with the pendulum, muscle testing, even with tarot to some extent, you're instructed to always ask a definite yes or no question, not an either or question. And so the exception of that is probably with tarot, where you can ask a question like, what will this decision look like? What's the outcome going to, what type of outcome can I expect? But before you even get to that, you still need to ask a yes or no question. So for example, a weak question would be, should I take this job or start a business? Right? So that's an example of an either or question. Whatever system of divination I go to ask that question, I'm not going to get a clear answer. Because if I ask the question, should I take this job or start a business, and the answer is yes, or whatever system you're working with, yes doesn't answer that question. So what you have to do is break it into 2 parts. Should I take this job? Yes or no, you get that answer. And then you ask the second question, should I start my own business? Yes or no, you get your answer. And then the two answers that you've gotten, you now have something to assess. So if you get two yeses, if you start with a yes and a no, well, that's obvious, right? You would know exactly how to proceed based on that. If you got two yeses, then pretty much that's telling you either choice will be a good one, you'll be fine either way. Pick which one you feel most comfortable with or you think is the most exciting. If you get two no's, then likely that's an indication of a third option that maybe you haven't considered, or those aren't really the question. That's not really the question that's in front of you. So you have to go back and think on that some more. And so when we're unsure of ourselves, we tend to seek that outer validation. That's where we're looking for our signs and wonders. And that's what helps us overcome and become more comfortable with the decisions we make. And that's how, it allows us to step into that space more firmly. But what we really want, is to not second guess. We want to have an inner knowing that the decision we're making is the right one for us at that time. And the process of getting to that, inner knowing is just that. It's a process. We have to come to it over time. We have to learn to trust ourselves. We have to learn to become confident in our decision-making process. And so I'll share with you a little of my journey and how I got here. When I came back to the States, I would say this is when I lived in Kyrgyzstan, I think for the first time, when I was in college. And then I came back to the States. I'd been working in a jewelry studio while I was in Kyrgyzstan, and I came back and I had all this jewelry. And there was this lovely little metaphysical store that was right up my alley, because I loved metaphysics before then. But I wasn't really like into it, right? I enjoyed it, but I wasn't really like steeped. And so I went to this cute little store called Spiral Circle, and the owner was this wonderful woman named Beverly. And she liked me and she liked my jewelry. And so she was interested in buying. And so when she was deciding which pieces, unlike a regular buyer who would just pick out what they like or what they think their customers would like, she pulled out a pendulum. And she's like, I do this with all of the vendors that come in that I buy stuff from. I go over I use the pendulum over each item and decide, let the pendulum help me decide which is the right thing. So I laid out all of my jewelry and she used her pendulum, something similar to this. So this is what she used over each piece of jewelry. And it was a fascinating process to watch because there were some pieces, I thought all of them were great, right? She could have taken any of them and it'd have been fine. But there were some pieces that were a definite yes, some were like, and some were a definite no. She bought all of the definite yeses. They sold pretty quickly, and we established a relationship, and I sold quite a bit of jewelry through her. And being so entranced by her process, that's actually where I got this pendulum. I asked her to help me pick one out that day. With pendulums, and we'll just go into a little bit of this. When you get your pendulum, you first want to establish the convention. So you ask it if this is the right one for me, and when or you feel over them and you feel which one is is drawn, that you're more drawn to. And then when you're holding your pendulum, the first question you want to ask is, show me a yes. And you wait for the pendulum to move, and it's either going to swing forward and back, or it's going to swing side to side. And since you've asked it to show you a yes, whichever motion it makes, that's your yes. The other one will be your no. So for me, the yes was back and forward, which was great. Okay. So for years, when I had decisions or when I was thinking about things or trying to figure out a way forward or whatever the thing was, I would check in with myself and use my pendulum, use my pendulum and ask it to show me. And I would get a strong yes. I would or get a strong no. And then if the answer was kind of like, not really, don't know, it would just kind of stay still. Maybe it would move around a little bit, but it wouldn't be in a definite direction. So that worked for a while. I mean, it continues to work. I just stopped using it at some point. And then I started using coins at one point, because, a yes or no, heads or tails, that's pretty easy. And I actually had different coins for different things. I had a gold coin, obviously, for any questions related to money. I had I had a Turkish coin when I was dealing with questions from old dude. And I had a regular quarter for like regular everyday stuff, And it's funny because when I was thinking about pulling these things out to show you in this video, I couldn't find any of my coins. And that's when I realized I haven't used them in forever. Like it's been almost 15 years since I probably used a coin to question anything. So that was kind of interesting for me. Another one that I might use would be my tarot cards or oracle cards. If I want a yes or no, or a spread to show me an answer, that sort of thing, I would use those. And I've been reading tarot for about 25 years now. So it's been a while. But that's the thing, with all of these systems of divination, you have to ask in faith that the answer you get is the one that you will follow, right? So, if you're confused about a situation, you ask a yes or no question, you go to whatever, tool you're going to use, and then you disregard the answer and have a whole nother set of experiences. You haven't created a solid connection with that tool for it to be of value to you, right? So if you're going to use a tool of divination, then you need to follow through on its guidance. There has to be an established level of trust, and that's where the faith grows. Also, with tools of divination, you set your own conventions. Like with the pendulum, I asked it to show me what for me is a yes or no. The same thing with the coins. Heads was going to be my yes, tails was going to be my no. That's kind of an obvious thing. With muscle testing or kinesiology, my yes is always obvious, right? Because my arm is going to stay straight if I'm doing the arm method. If I'm using the finger circles, then this is my yes, right? That's firm. If it's a no, my fingers are going to pull apart. Another style of muscle testing that I like to use is full body muscle testing. So I'll clear myself by rubbing this area here on my chest, under my clavicle, and then I'll stand still and just wait. And the answer is going to resonate in my body by either moving me forward or back. And for me, a forward is a yes and a backwards is a no. So you set your conventions, and once you set them, you follow them. Because when you don't, that's where the confusion comes in. So this is why people say, if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. Because if you can't pick a direction to go in, you're going to fall over at any turn. Anytime somebody comes up with a new idea, or you think a decision in one direction, you'll go do that. And then, I'm not sure about that. Let me turn around and go back. Like, there'll never be progress if you're always starting and stopping and starting and going backwards and that sort of thing. So, again, with the conventions, once you pick your convention, stick with it, right? So for instance, like with me, with tarot cards, I don't read reversals, which is when a card falls out upside down, and you read that typically as the opposite aspect of what the card's meaning is. I find that adds another layer of confusion at a time when, if I'm using the cards, I'm obviously struggling. I'm struggling with seeing the right path forward. So I don't want to add any more confusion. And so for me, I just ignore reversals, and I assume that if the card falls out, that was the card I needed to know, but I needed to know in its right meaning. And for that, I just ask that I get clear and direct guidance. Or, I'm asking, what do the cards need me to know? And the card that falls out is that answer. Whether it's upside down or not is irrelevant to me. So all of these are external systems of validation, right? And when I say external, they're really not. Your energy is being imprinted. Your energy and the energy of the situation is being imprinted into that system of divination, and what it's showing you is the culmination of that energy and what that's going to look like. That's why it's important for you to be clear in your question, because if you give jumbled energy, the system is going to read a jumbled response. The more clear you are in your question, then it has the opportunity to give you a clear answer. So these tools being visual representations, it's just a way to give you something tangible and visible to trust in and to rely on. I can see it with my own eyes. We tend to trust, we trust our eyes, even though eyewitness testimony isn't necessarily the most reliable. But if we see that the coin landed heads up, we take that as a yes, then we feel confident in moving in the yes direction. And what we're really trying to get to is an inner system, or a sense of inner knowing, where we're not having to use an external tool to see our guidance. And that is going to be meditation. You've got to meditate to have a clear and direct channel with your source, so that you can get information and be guided by information, so that you know what that information looks and feels like when you're getting it, and so that you can trust it. It's that channel that's going to guide you into the right decision to make. And what you'll notice is when you're meditating on a particular question, and then you get that inner knowing and that guidance, it has a quality of resonance to it. And it's something that, that's when you hear people say things like, I just had a gut feeling, right? Or I know it in my heart. It has a certain weight and resonance. It makes your hair stand on end sometimes. It causes a warm, flowing feeling across their body. Like, it's something that you immediately recognize from the inside out, right? And so what you're doing in that case is developing your sense of trust in yourself and in your inner wisdom. And that only comes with practice. So you've got to meditate, if you're just starting minimum 10 minutes a day, 5 isn't going to cut it. You're not going to have had a chance to sit and get still in 5 minutes. It's going to be a struggle at 10 anyway, but 15 minutes is what you're going to need to start, to be able to quiet the mind and to feel that connection, and then quiet the mind faster so that you can feel more of that connection, so that it grows stronger over time. So 10 to 15 minutes is what you'll need to start. But then once you've gotten your decision, your guidance, and you follow it, there's always that second guessing of, well, what if it doesn't work out? What if it doesn't work out like I planned? That is where you practice forgiveness, right? When you sit and you say to yourself, I made the best decision I could at the time, knowing what I knew then. And you forgive yourself, right? That's the first step. When you're making decisions, you feel a little conflicted or unsure about it, but you have to make a decision and then act on it, and then the outcome doesn't look like what you wanted, or it didn't work out like you planned. You forgive yourself first, right? I did the best I could. I made the best decision I could at the time, knowing what I knew then. And then you handle to the best of your ability whatever comes after, right? It's also, once you've gone through forgiveness, it's where you offer yourself some grace. The law of grace, the divine intervention or aid in the restructuring of the effects of your creations, where you surrender the miscreation back to source to be raised at a higher level, so that when the effects manifest, you're seeing it at that higher level. It's tempered by source, right? So basically, you've done something, it's created something, we call it something you didn't want, like, or, appreciate. That's the miscreation. Surrender that miscreation to source, let go of it, release the attachment, release the judgment to it that it was a bad thing. Release all of that. Ask to be lifted by the law of grace so that when your karma returns to you, it's not hitting you in the gut, right? You've been lifted up. So now it's just grazing the bottom of your feet. That's going to be growth, right? And the ultimate universal law that applies to these situations, divine order. Divine order. Where the universe, knowing that the universe operates in order and harmony, and everything, if allowed to be, is in right relationship to the whole. There are no mistakes. There are no wrong decisions. That takes a certain level of maturity to get to be able to accept that the things that happen are simply happening without casting judgment on them, whether they are good or bad. I think, there's the story of the farmer and his son, where, I don't know if I should start this story because I don't know if I can get all of it, but basically the idea is the farmer and the son are struggling to get by. The son goes out one day and finds a team of horses and brings the horses back to their farm. And the son asks the father, "Isn't this a good thing?" And the father's like, "I don't know, I can't call it." And then the stable of horses gets too excited one day and breaks through the gates, and as they're running out, they trample over the son, and he's injured. And so the son is like, "Oh, father, this horrible thing has happened. I'm not going to be able to help you tend to the farm." And the father's like, "I don't know, son. I don't know if it's a bad thing. I can't call it." And then the next week, the army is coming through conscripting all the young men, but because the son had been injured, he wasn't taken into war, and thus didn't die in the battle. And so, so father, this is a good thing, right? And he's like, "I don't know, I can't call it." So the moral of that story being that we don't know, when something happens, we don't know if it's good or bad. It simply is. And then there's something else that's going to come along that resonates with you at that level of consciousness in that situation, and that will be what it will be, whether good or bad. We're not judging it. So when you can move through forgiveness, employ the law of grace, and then get to a space of living in divine order where you haven't made mistakes. There are no mistakes. Everything, if allowed to be, and that if allowed to be relates to your sense of judgment and your intense feelings about it. I didn't put this in my notes, but I'm just going to tell you because it came up just now. For the last too fucking long years, I have beaten myself up over a decision I made 20 years ago not to take a job that on the surface looked perfect. And the decision I made instead was to pursue my jewelry, and make of that what it would become. At the time, I know that there are people that questioned my decision, but it didn't matter because it was mine and I made it. And it was only later, as I started to live out the effects of that decision in terms of, okay, so now I'm back in the States and I've made jewelry my work, but I have to make this work, and a lot of struggles financially trying to make all of that happen. And then I got to a level of success where my jewelry was in stores and selling really well, to a point where I could move overseas and still be selling and making money. And it was just, I got through all of that. But there was, anytime I would experience a certain level of financial hardship, I would look back at that decision and think, I'd be doing I'd be making so much more money. I would have been doing these things and having these experiences over here. I never would have stayed in this relationship. I wouldn't have, moved back to the state. Like all these what ifs and I would have dones. And, this last year or so, I've just had a lot going on that I needed to resolve and forgive and let go of and stop carrying all the past with me. And I finally got to a point where I let that go. And the level of freedom I have now, because I stopped regretting or second guessing that decision from so long ago, is tremendous. It was like someone pulled the stopper out of a bottle of champagne and like, I'm alive now. And so to get to a space of really living in the knowledge of divine order is powerful, and it's enriching and enlivening, and well, I can't recommend it enough. I can also say that I have, when I told you I couldn't find my coins that I used to use before. When I picked up my pendulums, my first thought was, oh, wow, I haven't touched these in years. And then as I sit and look at them now, I think it's probably been, man, oh man, it's probably been 15 years since I've looked at them. Because I've grown enough, had enough experiences that I went through all of these steps that I've discussed. I first started by using these external tools of divination to try to understand my feelings and reactions and what would be the next step. Then I started to practice forgiveness of the self for decisions I had made and the outcomes I was experiencing. Learning about and acting in loving the law of grace has been huge. To know that I can recognize I'm still going to receive my karma, because if I cause something, I'm going to see the effect. It is going to return to me. But to know that I can surrender what I considered a mistake and ask for divine intervention in restructuring whatever that effect was going to be, and lift me up so that it doesn't hit me, full force in the gut, but rather, like I said, graze the feet. That was huge. And then to finally step into a place of divine order where I haven't made any mistakes. Everything is as it should be. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in this moment, doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. It's strong and it's powerful, and I invite all of you to get there with me. Yeah, I walk and talk with a certain knowing. The girl is dangerous, and you can be too, right? Sometimes my videos come from downloads. Something that, Spirit gives me to share with you. And of course I have to. Oh, I want to, but I mean, it's like compelled. I don't get a download and then disregard it. We publish. Other times, you all in my world, you all ask me questions. Just like, we're just talking, we're being friends, and you're asking me a question, and I'm thinking on an answer. And I realize that the answer has a larger and more universal application. And so I'll record the video, because I know that, you're not the only person that's asked this question or has this on their mind. But today, it was just a matter of, look, I was cute and I wanted to film a video, but I didn't have a topic. So I asked a friend and she gave me a good one. So what I'm saying is, in addition to leaving me comments, ask me questions in the comment section. And, the fifth comment today on this, well, not today, but like the fifth comment on this video, or the fifth question, we'll say, the fifth question on this video, I will send you a pendulum, because I seem to have some that I'm not using. I'm here for you. I love you. I love me. I love this life. So let's do this. Bye.